Hi, this is Vinita Bhatia. I'm the editor of Campaign India, and I'm at Can Lion, where one of the conversations that everybody is having is around design. Now, when Canva launched in 2013, but Canva was its origins lay as a platform to democratize design. Today, it's making a deeper push into creating AI led tools that can help anyone across the board create assets, build presentations, and even automated workflows. But in all of this, what happens to the very simple premise of creativity in design? To understand more about that, especially with the enterprise version of Canva's products, I have with me Duncan Clark. He is the MD for EMEA and also the CEO for Pro Products at Canva. Hi, Duncan. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to Campaign.
Great to meet you, and thanks for coming to our beach.
Oh, you have a lovely beach over here. How has Can been doing for you so far? How have the conversations been?
Oh, it's been great. I mean, we have a huge presence this year. There's lots and lots of people from Canva here, and amazing positive feedback from the community. It's a really interesting mix-up of major enterprise customers, general members of the public, people who are just interested in brand and design. So a really great mix.
So I saw a small presentation just before we began talking that Canva research says that AI helps marketers free up 82% of their time so that they can focus on other aspects. And I also know that Canva came up with this report about the human taste. Are there certain very key insights that have then led into any iterations or new developments in the pro products that are there?
Yeah, so I mean, in a way, I think it's all the same. So we have people doing creative work, whether they're a marketer producing social media content or whether they're a professional designer crafting a logo. They're both in the same category of needing to get high quality work done as quickly as possible because ever more platforms, ever more aspect ratios, ever more audiences, segments, everyone is expected to produce more, but there's only the same amount of time. And so at Canva, we've spent years making our tool as easy to use as possible, but also as quick to use as possible. Starting with a template, being able to quickly translate from one language to another, having a button to click from landscape mode to portrait mode, and just doing a lot of that work for you. The way we see that is that it's doing the uncreative bit so that you can focus more on the creative bit. And that's exactly the same with our professional tools. So we've got tools like Affinity, our professional grade graphic design tool. We recently made it possible to hook that up with Claude. And you can do something like, say, name all the layers in my complicated document, and it will just do it in seconds. That would have taken hours before. Or you can say something like, edit all the photos in my 50-page brochure in one go, non-destructively, to match this style. It will go through and do that for you, but you can still go and edit it. And that's a really key point of philosophy for us when we think about AI. AI should always produce things that you as a human can edit, because your taste, your design, your decision making should never be constrained by the fact that you're using AI as an aid.
So you mentioned about the fact that you are using AI a lot to help people free up the time to use, I would say, the left side of the brain a lot more proactively, right? And this is slightly veering away from the very origin of Canva in 2013, because when it started off, it was more with a simple proposition: empower anyone to design. It still continues with that. I believe that is still the mission statement. But with Canva AI 2.0, if one may use that term, the company seems to be increasingly describing a future where users tell the platform what they need and AI does most of the heavy lifting.
So we see this as an absolutely natural continuation of what we've always done. So if you think of all the different features in Canva over the years, they've been designed to let people achieve their goals faster and to get to a good quality visual output as quickly as possible. And so, some of the things we used to do with maybe heuristics or logic, we can now do with AI, and it just does them a bit better. So if you say, I want to transfer all the content from this presentation and make it into a document, we can now do that with the AI just that bit better, but it's the same process. And simultaneously, in parallel, if you wanted to take your presentation and say, I work across 20 markets, I want it in 20 languages, AI is an amazing tool for being able to just automate that process for you. But ultimately, it's all about using the best available technology to allow people to design as well as possible, as quickly as possible, and as easily as possible. And adding AI into that mix is something we've done for a long time, and it doesn't change the mission one bit.
Okay, and you mentioned about Affinity, and like I said, I was reading some of the comments about Affinity, and s- quite a few of them were really humorous. One person on Reddit mentioned that the decision to make Affinity freely available and fold professional grade creative tools is, like I said, literally bonkers. I mean, it's so much more better than subscribing to some of the other expensive ones. But it also feels like, the broader Canva ecosystem is seeing a significant shift. Is this some kind of a problem that you're trying to also solve for smaller businesses and enterprises that already might have some kind of an existing creative software model, which the tools might have not been able to address?
Absolutely. So we have always had this mission to empower the world to design. And by the world, we mean everyone. But we decided to start with the 95, 98% of people who don't have any specialist graphic design training or skill. And that's been amazing. That's powered Canva's growth to 265 million people using it to design every single month. So we are easily the biggest design tool in the world. Um, but we always wanted as well to support the more advanced designer. And that might be a professional creative working in an agency. It might be a professional marketer sitting in an organization. But it could also be a student who wants to go from being more of a content creator to being a full professional creative. And so that's why we partnered up with Affinity, who joined the Canva family a couple of years ago. And we released their new version in October. And I think the point the Reddit commenter was making was that we decided to make that available completely for free. So anyone in the world can download Affinity for free and use it without limitations forever. It's also possible to buy it under Canva Enterprise, which means that it's just included with a Canva Enterprise seat. And that means you get it under SSO. It means that you have all the security process and all that stuff. And that also gives you the AI capabilities. So we really wanted to do this because we felt that for far too long, the cost had been a barrier, not just to the tools, but even the industry overall. And it's always been core to our mission to produce the best tools and to give them away for a genuinely fair price, or a lot of them for free. And we've seen really widespread adoption all over the world, but especially actually in countries where the subscriptions for the incumbent tools were disproportionately expensive. So in India, for example, we've seen really rapid adoption, and that's been really satisfying to see.
So you mentioned about the fact that cost was a barrier, as I wouldn't say was, it still is a barrier for a lot of the companies that are there. And certain geographies have really taken very proactively to tools like Affinity, right? Because it really helps them. But do you have any way to measure whether the strategy of making it freely available so that folks can see the merits that is there is actually changing the user behavior, where they start using it a lot more proactive, a lot more, regularly?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're about to cross 7 million downloads of Affinity since we released it only about 7 months ago. So it's been a huge reaction from the creative community in terms of adopting the software. But also, we've had amazing feedback from professionals. I was actually showing a video yesterday by Jessica Hirsch, one of the world's leading vector graphic artists and lettering artists, who's done her whole new book in Affinity and talks about just how much of an unlock it has been for her. Because in addition to it being more accessible in terms of pricing, it's also just much more integrated. So photo editing, vector graphics, and page layout, they're all in one tool, which means that as a creative pro, you can move between different types of discipline without breaking your flow. So it's not just that it's more accessible, it's also a better way to work. And seeing those two things play out in parallel has been really satisfying.
Okay, so if you just gave this particular instance, but if creation becomes increasingly automated, doesn't that also risk, democratization of design, risk commoditizing creativity? Because there is a chance that we are already seeing a lot of swing back about AI slop, which is flooding our streams. And isn't that again going to become even more possible over there, especially when tools like Canvas are available?
Yeah, so people often ask me, is AI replacing human designers? And my response generally is look at Canva's monthly active user numbers. We've just been growing exponentially for years and years, and that's only continued as we've added AI features into the tools. So it's certainly the case that more humans are designing than ever. And we think that's a good thing. It means that more people are able to participate in the visual economy. But with ever more content being produced, even as we optimize our tools to make sure anything automated is of really high quality, which is what we're working on, with ever more content produced, it becomes more and more important if you want to cut through or you want to create a piece of work that really shines, that you retain the quality bar, the taste, the distinctiveness that a professional designer brings. And that's actually part of why we've extended into this professional suite of tools with things like Affinity for graphic design and Cavalry for motion graphics and Flourish for data visualization. So that when you're creating content, even if you're doing it faster, you've still got the capacity to have that craft discipline that makes a difference between a piece of work and a great piece of work.
So, I'm talking, now I'll dive into the enterprise segment, okay? And that is something that sits very much in your alley. Agentic AI promises to automate increasingly complex workflows, and that also includes the visualization tools that are there. But many of the companies are now beginning to worry because the economics of the whole thing seem very uncertain, especially with token consumption across the industry rising rapidly. And many model providers are revisiting their pricing structures. As Canva starts introducing more agentic capabilities and you work with enterprise companies, how are you thinking about the balance between user freedom and compute cost?
Yeah, so that's a really important theme that we're investing very heavily in researching and solving. I mean, for us, the first thing to say is that in Canva, AI is always something you can choose to do more or less of. You don't have to use AI for your flow, so it's opt-in. The second thing to say is that we have our own foundational model, the Canva Design Model. And what that does is it composes a design from the elements that exist in Canva and also the elements that live in your brand, things like your logo, your typography. That's actually a very efficient way to generate a design because it's an orchestration layer rather than a kind of generation layer in the pure sense. That allows us to be really efficient with costs, and we're investing in all sorts of kind of future technologies, whether that's running that kind of technology on device or whether it's just continuing to make it more and more efficient so that we can make sure we've always got cost sensitivity in mind.
Okay.
Lovely.
Well, thank you so much, Duncan, for taking the time to speak to us. And I hope you have a great time at Cannes. And that's it from us. This is Campaign. Please keep following us for more videos. Thank you.